to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. Host Jennifer Carr. Today we're wading into the world of writing and letting our experiences tell the stories. What does it take to craft a story that resonates with readers across the globe? How do writers find their voice and the courage to put it out into the world? And once written, what comes next? The journey from a flicker of an idea to a published book is filled with both challenges and triumphs. Whether you're penning your first draft or navigating the complexities of publishing, every step is a leap towards fulfilling your creative potential. Navigating this path can be a solitary endeavor filled with self-doubt and the sometimes overwhelming tasks of editing and re-editing. It is a process that begs the question, what inspires writers to keep pushing forward, and how do they adapt to this evolving landscape of genre and audiences? Well, today we're exploring these questions and more. Joining us for this exploration is Bob Gonzalez, author of A Flicker in the Water, Inside the Tales, a book that has not only entertained but educated its readers since its release in 2022. Bob has experienced the highs and lows of the writing and publishing process firsthand, and he's here to share his invaluable insights and inspiring stories from his journey. So if you're looking to dive into the world of writing or perhaps seeking tips on how to navigate the publishing maze, stay tuned as we walk through Bob's experiences and maybe find inspiration in our own creative pursuits. Bob, I'm so glad you're here today, so welcome to the show.
Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. Listen, I'm excited because you seem to just have this love of nature and adventure, and you've also tackled writing. And so those two things can go very well together, but they can probably also have their challenges. But before we dive into all of that, tell us about you and how you found yourself writing in the first place.
Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania. When I was in school, a lot of the teachers told me that I wrote really well, and I never really took it all that seriously. I would just hand in my paper, get it back, and but then many years later, I decided maybe they were right. Maybe I'll give it a try. So I decided to write this book. I didn't write this book until I was in my mid-50s, so I had a long time to really learn the craft of writing and how to engage readers with the words that you write and put it in a way that is relatable to them. So that's how I did it, and I wrote the book, and I'm really glad I did it. It's been really well received. People have really given me a lot of great compliments. I just had a compliment recently that really, really touched me. Somebody came up and bought my book for their wedding anniversary, which to me, that was really touching, because I can understand a birthday gift or Father's Day or, something like that. But a wedding anniversary, I thought, wow, that's really something special. So that was a great compliment. Yeah.
So what makes your book so special? Tell us what it's about.
Well, I think most of us can relate to the oceans. Most of our planet is the ocean. So there's a lot of stories. In fact, most of human existence has been on the oceans, with all the shipping and all the trade and all the everything since people started walking on the planet. So the oceans have a lot to give us, and we have a lot to talk about with the oceans. So I decided to, I had 15 years out there myself. A lot of it was for recreation, but I learned a lot too along the way, and actually when I was writing the book, I learned a few things. I think that, most of us can relate to what our oceans are about. So that's what I try to convey to the reader.
Fantastic. Now, so you grew up in Pennsylvania, but that's not where you are now. You got a little bit closer to the oceans, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Most of the stories take place in the Gulf of Mexico, most of them in the northern Gulf, along the panhandle of Florida, around Destin. Some of them take place down in the southern Gulf and in the Keys, in the Atlantic, in the Bahamas, places like that. I do talk about in general, though, the oceans of the world. Like, I learned a few things which really, really, really blew me away. Like, for example, the Sea of Galilee in northern Israel. I thought it was a sea all these years. I thought it might have even been part of the Mediterranean Sea, but it's not. It's a freshwater lake. Yeah, which I didn't know that. It was a freshwater lake, and it's below sea level in northern Israel, and that really, really surprised me. That was one thing, and I learned about the Mediterranean Sea a little bit. It's bigger than the Gulf of Mexico, like by twice the size or more. And there's only one way in and out of there, though. It's between Spain and Gibraltar, and it's only 9 miles that you can get in and out of the Mediterranean Sea, which really surprised me too. Yeah, yeah.
That is probably one of my favorite parts of writing. And I write fiction, but you still have to do research, and I love learning. I have always loved learning. And so doing the research and learning things that I can incorporate into my stories, that's probably one of my favorite parts of actually writing.
It's great. You can't sit down to write a book without learning a few things as you go.
Yes, about life, about nature, about people, about yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
list goes on. So, what was
Yeah.
probably your favorite experience that you have based some of your writing on?
My favorite experience, well, I didn't recognize it as my favorite at the time, but the experience that led to the title of the book, A Flicker in the Water, was a battle that me and my team had with a tuna in the Gulf of Mexico. And the battle raged on for hours. And I didn't think of this at the time, but when I saw the tuna in the water kind of like shimmered. You know, it had lights from the platforms that are out there. There's oil rigs around Louisiana. That's where the story, this particular one, took place. And the water looked like it was flickering on and off like a light would flicker. So I thought to call it A Flicker in the Water. That's how the title came about. That's one of my fondest story in there.
That's really cool. Now, have you always been a storyteller? Because there is a difference between a writer and a storyteller. Have you always been a storyteller, or have you just kind of figured out along the way how to make your experiences actual stories?
You know, I have figured it out along the way, and I have figured out how to inject humor into things. I did that, you know, by learning the craft. I read great writers like Ernest Hemingway. The Old Man and the Sea was a big inspiration for me. And in fact, his granddaughter Mariel wrote the forward for my book, and she said it spoke to her at a deep level of appreciation, which that meant a lot to me, you know, coming from her. So yeah, it's something I learned along the way, and I'm still learning. It never ends.
Oh, isn't that the truth? So, did you take classes? Did you take what? How did you teach yourself to write like this?
By reading. If you read the works, you know, the great works in literature like Hemingway, like Count of Monte Cristo, the Odyssey, which I really like, yeah, and kind of look at their techniques and see how they do it, and see you know what works for them, and then put it in your own way. I don't try to imitate them. I try to learn from how they do it, and then do it in my own way.
Yes, I have always said, and I will continue to say, that a good writer will be an avid reader, someone who will read. And sometimes you learn how not to write from reading, and sometimes you learn the best things to put into your writing. But yes, I agree that to be a good writer, you really need to be a reader.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah. Do you have a favorite genre that you do like to read that you take inspiration from?
I usually like nonfiction stories about nature and the outdoors, and great stories you know like the Odyssey is really, it takes place outdoors. Actually,
Oh
it's
yeah.
yeah, and things like that, and more contemporary stuff. You know, like The Old Man and the Sea, like I said, and things like that. I there's some the Bible has some great stories too. You know. Yeah, and in fact, in part of the book, I put a spiritual component in there on purpose because I think the oceans have a spirit to it as well. You know, it's if you're a believer or non-believer, I believe that you know, God made the oceans, and His spirit and His hand is there. So I wanted to include that in the book.
I love that. I did not know that, and I love that. I was actually in Orange Beach a couple of weeks ago, and I grew up down there, right? So that's where I spent time on the beaches like every weekend when I possibly could. We would go before school in the mornings and sit. We would go to Hardee's, grab breakfast, go sit and watch the waves at the beach before we had to go to school, and it was like our family ritual kind of thing. And I can still today, like, so a couple weeks ago, we went down there, and I have never seen the water on a not stormy day be a double red flag for like multiple days in a row. But it was just angry and churning, and the waves were huge, and they were just massive, and it was
Mhm.
overwhelming because you could see, you were like, there was a creator who was involved in this. There's no way that this just happens on its own. And to think, if that is overwhelming, how much more overwhelming God is. And so, yeah, my brain gets lost in the ocean. That is probably one of my biggest spiritual, like, just moments when I sit and stare at the water.
I totally agree. There's no way you could be out there and see everything around you and not believe that the creator created it in magnificence.
Oh,
I mean, it's
perfection.
incredible.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. I could talk about no, I could talk about that forever and all day. So let's I get overwhelmed by it and I'm like I'm tearing up thinking about it. So let's get back to writing. So what's your process when it comes to writing? You know, whether you're sitting down to just kind of jot down a story or do a whole book. Do you have a ritual or a plan in place, or are you just like, oh, a story popped into my head, I should sit down and write it?
Well, sometimes you know what you want to write about, and then as you write, I look at it like this. I look at it as planting the seed, and then watering it with your words. And as the words grow, like you're watering the plant, and it continues to grow, and it grows into a tree over time. You know, and that's how I look at the writing. It's really satisfying when it starts to multiply and grow on itself, and you see it sprout, and that's a really satisfying feeling as an author.
Oh, it really is. And that's such a great analogy for it too, because it is, you know, you sit down and you're like, all right, I have this idea. And all of a sudden this idea turns into a page. And that's kind of what happened when I wrote my first book was I thought, all right, I need to finish this story that I was dreaming and I woke up from. So I start writing and I'm like, ooh, there's another page and another page. And then I have
Mhm.
chapters worth of material. And I was like, I think I'm going to write a book. Like, where did that even come
Mhm.
from? But it did. It just kind of grew into something. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you write the book, and then you have to do something with the book. So,
Mm.
did you publish on your own? Did you find a publisher? What was your process like for that?
Well, I found a publisher. I looked around a little bit and I saw this one publisher called Mindster Media. They worked with Mariel Hemingway, and I thought, you know what? In the topic that I'm writing, she would be the perfect person to reach out to see if she might want to write the forward for this. And I submitted it to them, and then they submitted it to her, and she looks them over, and if she likes them, she'll write the forward for it. And thankfully, she liked mine, and she wrote it for me, and I couldn't have been more happy with that.
So, what did it look like? Because I'm self-published. I do all of the work, you know, from having to figure out who's going to do my covers, who's going to, you know, send it to Amazon. Yeah, it's me. I do all of that. So, working with a
Mm.
publisher, how was that?
Well, they handle a lot of those things for you, depending on what you get. They have different things. They could do one or two things, or they could do the whole thing. You know, for me, starting out new, um, I just thought, you know, this is going to take me forever. A lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes along the way, and probably some costly mistakes. so, so I figured, let me submit it to them. Let the professionals do it, and that's how I did it. And I'm glad I did. It came out better, I think, than I could have done by myself.
You are not wrong. It is definitely a trial and error type process. It does get
Yeah,
easier with your subsequent books, but yeah, doing it yourself is like, oh, that didn't work.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. So are they do all of your editing, they do your book covers and everything?
Yeah, you know, they have different things you can ask them to do, but they're capable of doing whatever you ask them for. They did the editing, which really needed it. I thought when I first handed in the manuscript, it was pretty much, you know, the way it should be. But no, I mean, there's a lot of commas, a lot of periods, a lot of punctuations that you know, it's good when you have an editor with fresh eyes looking through it.
Isn't that the truth? And let me tell you, so this last book that came out of mine in February, I read it twice. My editor reads it once. I have multiple beta readers that read it. I read it again. My editor finalizes it. That's a lot of eyeballs on my book. And the day that it
Yeah.
published, I opened it up and found a blasted typo. And I was just like, it happens. Now, and then that happens in traditional books too. Like, I get that. But I was just like, are you kidding me? So, yes, the more eyes on it, the better.
Yeah, mine has one or two that I caught there at the end, but you know, we'll learn to live with them.
That's right.
The second edition will have it fixed up. Yeah,
It gives it character. That's all.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Oh,
you're
my
right. The
goodness.
traditional publishers have that too. So you know, don't
That's
be
right.
so hard on yourself if that happens.
Oh, for sure. Like, I have not picked up my first books I don't know, in a year and a half because I was just like, I can't look at it because I know what I'm going to find if I open it. But I love
Yeah.
the experience and I'm glad it's out there.
Yeah.
But I agree. And that is something that I say it probably 9 times out of 10 shows. Like, my number one piece of advice is to hire a good editor because that will make
Mhm.
or break your book. Because you don't want to read a badly edited book. You want to read a finished product that's polished. So
Mhm.
that's just my
Mhm.
PSA for today. Hire a good editor.
Yeah, even with a typo or two, I've had a lot of people tell me the book is really well written. So that's what's
Yes.
important.
And that's the thing with an editor is they're not there to rewrite your book and to make it their book.
Mm.
They want to make your work the prettiest version it could possibly be. They want it polished, but it's still your book. So don't be afraid. And if you do come across, again, I'm on a soapbox here, but if you do come across an editor who's like, no, let's change this, they're probably not the editor for you because they want to make it theirs and not yours.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
So are you writing another book or more books or?
I have one that I am writing. It's about baseball. It's kind of like a historical nonfiction about the baseball franchises from like 1900 to today. Um, it's meant to be informational, but there's a lot of wordplay in there, which I really enjoy. I love playing with the words. I'll give you one
Yeah.
example of one in the baseball book. That it's not. It'll be up probably. I'm looking maybe about a year from now.
Okay.
Um, there was a player who played for the Detroit Tigers by the name of Norm Cash, and Norm Cash was like a lifetime 280 hitter with, I don't know, maybe 15 home runs a year. But in one year, he hit like 350 or 340 or something like that, and he had like 30 home runs. And I said, for that one year, Cash played on credit. Things like that. Those are the kind of words I like to play with.
Yes, I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah,
Though that's something
yeah.
that, when I'm reading nonfiction, it can get so boring. And so stuff like
Mm.
that would make me want to continue reading a good nonfiction book. I love that.
Oh, there's plenty of that in there. I love doing it.
That's fantastic. So I bet you really enjoyed doing research for that book because I
It
love
was fun.
baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you really? All good.
I
Yeah.
do.
What's your favorite team?
Well, I was raised a Braves fan. Like it was kind of one of
Okay.
those things that, back in the day when Smoltz and Chipper Jones and all, like,
Yeah.
I may have had a
Yeah.
poster of Javier on
Mm.
my wall when I was in middle school. I mean, it just is what it is.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, and they're good now again, the Braves. But anyway, yeah, I engaged in a lot of that wordplay. And I also learned so many things about baseball that I thought I knew a lot. But when I started doing this, wow, there's so many things I learned. I'll give you
Yeah.
Don Mattingly. You remember him from the
Hmm.
Yankees? I saw a stat the other day that he played, I think it was 13 years or 14 years. And one year, he hit 6 grand slams in one year. And that was the only year he hit any grand slams. He didn't hit a grand slam in any other year except that one year where he hit 6. How amazing is that?
That's wild. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
yeah,
Well, and I will say that I can relate to that. I played softball growing up, and I had a season where I hit 4 grand slams in fast pitch softball, and they called me the grand slammer, and I never hit another one in my entire ever playing. And I was like, well, they should have
wow,
nicknamed me, I guess.
yeah,
It happens.
yeah, yeah. Actually, in my ocean book, there are some sports references too. I talk about the Miami Dolphins a little bit, and some baseball stuff in there. I think readers will see a lot of sports analogies in that book too. I won't give it away; they'll have to read it.
I like it. Get them hooked, and then be like, sorry, pick it up to read it and find out yourself.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, I love that. Okay, so what else do you want to tell us about your work and your experience in writing?
The book took about a year to work, to write. I would say to any author out there, don't. I mean, sometimes the temptation is to rush it in because you
Oh,
can't wait to get it out there. But slow down, make sure it's all right. Patience in this case, I think, is really a virtue because once it's out there, it's hard to recall. You can do it, but it's hard.
yeah.
And you wanted the final version to be the best version, and I think that takes methodical patience. I think that's the best way to put a book out there instead of rushing it through. Is try to do it the best you can, and I mean there will come a time where it has to get out there. Don't over procrastinate, but make sure maybe write it, sit on it for a little while, go back and reread it. Maybe you might see some things you want to change or write differently. I mean, in Ernest Hemingway, in one of his books, I read one time where he rewrote it like 35 or 40 times before he was satisfied with it. So it happens to all the authors.
It
So
does.
yeah,
It really
yeah.
well, and that is so because you get so excited, right? You're so excited to write. You're so excited to put the words on the page. You want people to get as excited as you are about the story. And so yeah, we have that temptation to rush into it and be like, "Okay, here's my book." And it's like, "Ooh, you might should have taken an extra minute or two on that one." Yeah, it's real. That struggle is real.
Yeah, one tip that I learned too about the writing is that when you're writing, you want to be understood instead of you want to understand your material. You're not trying to make the reader understand it. By your understanding it automatically the reader will understand it.
Ooh, I like that. No, that is valid. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so we're to the point of the show where we're going to flip the script, and I'm no longer the host of this show, Bob. The show is now yours, so have at it.
All right, Jennifer. Well, I asked you about baseball. You're a Braves fan, and I can remember those days with Smoltz and Glavine and Maddox. Man, those Braves teams they were awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Do you like other sports, or is it just baseball?
Well, because I live in Alabama, I am indeed a college football fan. I will
Mhm.
say Roll Tide. That is also my husband. We gave that school a lot of money for his education, so we are indebted to them permanently. But no, my mom has always been an avid sports fan, and she raised us to love Jesus, love the Braves, and love Alabama football.
Mhm.
So
Okay, fair enough. Have you ever been deep sea fishing, and would you like to go sometime? And
okay,
where?
listen, I like fishing in general. Deep sea fishing, the idea terrifies me only because, like I said, I get so overwhelmed by just looking at the ocean.
Mm,
I've been on a couple of cruises and like I cannot just sit there and stare at the water because it's so much. And so I am terrified of the idea of deep sea fishing. I have friends that love it, but
mm.
it's not something I've ever been interested in.
Okay, you can read about it.
You know what? That sounds great.
Yeah, you won't even get seasick that way, or maybe you will if it's we're written well enough. Who knows?
I was there, a little green around the gills.
Yeah, yeah. Mm,
No, that's it. But I do like
mm,
being on the water. I like, good pontoon boat. I've been on a sailboat. That was a different experience.
mm, mm.
I don't want to repeat it, but I'm glad I can say I've done it. And I've been on cruise ships, and I'm good.
Okay. What else? When do you have your next book coming out,
Ooh,
and what is it about?
I don't get to answer that question very often. So the first book of the series that continues in October just came out in February, and so the second book of the series is coming out in October, and it's called Wrapped Up in You, and it is the series is based on a country music reality singing competition, and it kind of follows some of the competitors from the show. It's a fiction romance novel, but yeah, that's my next book coming out.
Okay, well, make sure to pick up Jennifer's book when it's ready.
So much for that recommendation. I love that. Thanks for having me on your show today, Bob.
Yeah, sure, you're welcome.
That's awesome.
Mm.
So I'm going to take the reins back real quick and ask, like, how can listeners connect with you? Are you on social media, your website, that kind of thing?
I'm on social media. The best way to connect to them is through my website, flickerinthewater.com. There you can reach my Instagram, my Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. YouTube, I have some videos up there. There's a lot of things on the website too that are not in the book that I think people will find really interesting. So I would say the one-stop shop for everything is the website, flickerinthewater.com.
Okay, and I'll make sure that's in the show notes. And so, do you have videos of actual deep sea fishing, like you on your adventures and that kind of thing?
Well, there's plenty of pictures there. I don't know if there's videos of that. There's videos of interviews though, and there's videos of reviews and things like that. Some videos that I've made myself. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, there's plenty of pictures to keep everybody entertained. I'll show you. Here's a picture. Here's what the cover of the book looks like.
Ooh.
See that? Yeah. This this is a Goliath grouper. That's the biggest grouper in the grouper family, and they're really plentiful in Florida and throughout the Caribbean. Goliath groupers.
Oh my gosh, they look terrifying.
Yeah.
See, it's stuff like that
They're
doesn't
big.
want.
They're
Yeah,
big. Yeah.
that's what keeps me off of a deep sea fishing boat. Just saying.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he could eat me, and that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Bob, thank you for being here. And I've got just one more question for you. It is the big question that will, it's your exit ticket. It's the only way we end our conversation. So answer it, don't answer it. We'll be here all day. That's how that goes. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
All right. What is the one piece of advice or encouragement that you want someone to walk away with if they hear nothing else?
Well, in fishing, like in life, fishing can be very frustrating at times. I talk about this in the book. If you fight through the frustration and you persist, you usually find good things on the other side. So the tendency sometimes would be to give up. But like Jim Valvano, the basketball coach, said, "Don't ever give up." So yeah,
You know what?
if you
It's so
don't give up,
simple.
yeah, 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 don't ever give up. You can make it to the other side.
I love it. That is actually the message in my first book. It's called No Matter What. And the message is that no matter what happens on this side of things, there's always something beautiful on the other side. So I love that.
Yeah.
It is such a great message that I wish we could have that forethought when we're in the middle of the hard stuff, when we're in the middle of the messy, that we can always remember, hey, I'm not to the other side yet. And there's something better waiting.
Yeah, and sometimes I have to remind myself of it, but I try to keep it conscious and bring it to the forefront, and that it's the best thing to do, I think.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Like this was like a lightning fast conversation, but I felt like it was so rich that we just we hit it all. And if somebody leaves going, I didn't get anything, well, that's their fault because I'm sitting here going, this was so uplifting and encouraging. I loved it.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate you having me on, and I loved it too.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm going to pick up your book. That is not even me just blowing smoke because my brother-in-law is actually an avid fisher and he loves to go fishing and that's like his favorite pastime. And I'm thinking, it would make a fantastic Father's Day gift. So why not?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And he can leave me a review too if he would like.
I'll pass that along. Thank you so much. And I
Yeah.
hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jennifer. You too.